keep it spontaneous. Okay, good. Keep it fresh. We can have our little chat here in front of everyone. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to do it. Oh.
We'll have fun.
Let's have some fun.
But one bit of formality. I noticed that there are more than 4 people in the room, but there are only 4 people who have checked into Medeco yet.
You're such a good share.
I'll find another bit of formality to throw at you next. Deb is there. So my co-chair is online. AJ, can you hear us? Just type yes in the room or something. Happy? I'm worried. But that's a constant, not a variable.
It's because the applications are always secure. But you can just assume that that's like a baseline.
So
You got the mail info with you? Yes.
if I point this mic straight at my face, I can make a booming sound in the room. That's fun. So it's 1 minute past the hour. Let's get this over with. Anyway,
I think that's the new no. Yeah.
we'll we'll do the normal recitations if I can figure out what the next button is. So this doesn't work, then perhaps that one does work. Yeah, that works. Note well. You might have heard it before, but IETF has policies. If you don't like them, you shouldn't be here. And you have agreed to follow them, whether you read them or not. By participating in IETF, you agree to follow the process and policies. I don't think anyone is going to assert patents on media registrations, but if you are aware of such, disclose them. And whatever you say will be made public and used against you at the least opportune moment. The RFCs are on the screen. Yeah, you know what it is. And the short version of this slide is behave yourself. If you don't understand what behave yourself means, read the slide. Be polite. And don't harass other people. And if you think you have been harassed, go harass Pete. Yeah, he's an ombudsperson. I like that name, ombudsperson. Yes. Oh yeah. Everyone should sign into the session via data tracker. Use MEDIAMAN to join the mic queue. Otherwise, we won't listen to what you have to say. And participate in show of hands, of which I don't think we'll have any this time. I don't like it. So, remote participation, turn off your audio and video if you're not talking. Resources, agenda, Meet Echo, technical assistance. Follow the links. And now we start on the real business. The first is the wait. We are waiting for a volunteer. Mark has volunteered. Ooh, he has not volunteered. You shouldn't wave your hands like that. Do we have another volunteer? Okay, we have a volunteer. Type your name into the chat so we know it. So we have it recorded. I have had a couple of sessions where I didn't get the minutes in before because I had forgotten who volunteered to take them. That was a bit sad. Yep. So, agenda bash. Anyone wish to add anything to the agenda? Rahul?
Okay, I had made a request yesterday for media type registrations for legacy media types. So can you, either we can discuss that as part of 6383 BIS or we can do it after.
So let's put it under any other business just before wrap up. So help me remember. I think it should be short, basically. Someone should look at the registry. So status of working group documents, we have some of them. Haptics and top level are still in the RFC editors queue. I've been there for a while. Our ADs may want to tell us if they want, if the RFC editor is in a crisis or if there's something wrong with them. Yeah. So I think they're just late. So
the two of them that are in the editor queue are part of a cluster, and there's one of them in the cluster, which is the haptics document that is misref for the top level document. Oh wait, sorry.
No, the misref, the only reference is to the other documents.
Sorry, yes. So it's a cluster that they haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, there are two documents in a cluster, and they point to each other. Yeah. So the opinion of the group has been that the MEDIAMAN top level standards tree and suffixes should be merged into 6838 BIS, of which we have a draft or a first start. Hooray for the editors. Suffixes. All respondents to the call for consensus on document agree that yes, this is what we want the document to say. And all respondents published. This is bad typing on my side. All respondents supported holding for RFC 6838 BIS integration. I think I got the number wrong too. So we have a consensus to adopt the draft that Mark has put into Markdown for us as the starting point for 6838 BIS. It's now been published under the draft IETF name. Hooray. And Mark and Pete have said that they are willing to be editors and that they will appreciate pull requests.
Well, no. We'll look at them.
If they're beautiful, you'll appreciate them, right? No, later. John, you're on the queue.
on behalf of my co-authors of 6838. I recognize in the document's first paragraph, and probably and possibly its second, were of the acknowledgments were taken over from the original, but I think it would be very disappointing, if not worse, for for this for this version not to show the acknowledgement to the authors of the original version, especially Ned.
Especially. I mean, remembering that is always a good thing. Okay. Then let me see what's the next slide. So my next point is now open issues on 6838 bits. Let's take a discussion of that. I have 4 open issues that I listed. 3 of them are in corporate document, which is kind of, yeah, sure. And one of them is clean up additional information, like there's a field for Mac, 4-digit types or something that nobody cares about anymore, including Apple. So now I should leave the word to Mark to say, how do you want to approach this? Take that one. Yeah, and everyone can throw tomatoes at you.
After extensive discussion with my co-editor, my thinking, and I don't know if you want to come up or just nod or just give me the thumbs up or thumbs down. Give me the, yeah. Okay. We know how to work together. So the 00 draft was an attempt to have the smallest diff possible from the existing 6838. I think where the intent was that the only thing we actually removed was the change log from the previous RFC, because that is obviously not relevant. And so my thinking, which get the thumb out, is that what we might want to do is incorporate these documents one by one, making adjustments as we see fit editorially, and publish each one as a separate draft so people can look at them in look at the diffs in isolation. And then we can do an editorial run through it and take all the smaller things through, or look at the arrangement of the document and so forth, with appropriate diffs at each stage. And just at a higher level, my thinking would be that we'd use the issues list to capture small things like what you mentioned before with, I forget what it was, but smaller editorial issues. But if there are any other big substantive changes that can't be captured in a small issue, we'd probably want to see a separate draft for that, just like we've seen here, so that people can look at that idea in isolation. Does that seem like a reasonable starting point?
Murray?
Yes, it seems like a perfectly good starting point. And you may have answered the question I was about to ask. We found that the appeals procedure for registrations is a little bit could be much more crisp. Nothing to do with any of the reason that Deb is in the room. So, can I just open that as an issue, or do you want to talk about it, or I haven't really said what the problem is, but
I think that's appropriate as an issue to start with,
okay.
at least. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
open one.
I mean, we can always decide, oh, this is too big, we need to actually see a draft on it. But starting as an issue is fine. Yeah.
So the TLDR version is that the appeals procedure for these things makes reference to something in RFC 2026 that this is the thing I showed you. It could be much more clear about where the appeal lands and is there a further appeal process.
Right.
It borrows a section from 2026 that I don't think was meant to be borrowed. So I just want to
Okay.
clean that up.
So it sounds like it's a little more than editorial, but it's not.
But it's not a like. you don't
It's
have
not a
to
huge
borrow.
new mechanism
No.
or anything. Yeah. Okay.
I don't open an issue then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll put an I have started typing the issue.
And likewise, sorry. And John Clenson, yeah, likewise, for the acknowledgments, opening an issue to remind us to do that would be, very appropriate. Of course. Yeah.
So it's file as number 6. So let me see.
So I would hope that Pete, depending on your availability, we'd try and get the first one of these revisions going certainly in the next few weeks. I know that as an American, you have some holidays. I have 3 weeks without my family over the holidays, so I might be productive. We'll see, or I might be completely unproductive. We'll find out. Yeah.
So Murray,
Yeah, just on timing, but a purely selfish question: is there any chance that we could finish this before March? No,
my personal.
I said it's
judgment
purely
says no.
selfish.
It's perfectly possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I only have the one.
What do you mean by finish?
Clear the ISG.
Oh, that's not up to us.
I can grease some wheels.
Oh,
we,
do tell.
well, we can get it to the ISG,
Yes.
or we can aim to keep it to the ISG, but that requires pretty much speedy.
Yeah.
Speedy
But
action.
we have the tools.
Yep.
Is that all you need from me, or?
So I don't think there's anything else needed now. We have 1 point on. Oh, Manu. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, +1 to the approach, that sounds fine to me. There are parts in the suffixes draft that contemplate changes to the registry. So in the structured suffixes registry, we have a lot of copy paste content in there.
Mhm.
At what point do we clean that up? So it probably needs to happen at some point. Is that when does that happen? I guess
I
is
think
my
we'll
question.
look at that as we incorporate the draft, and I think as we discussed when we adopted that draft or gained consensus in that draft, there's a certain interpretive act of actually putting that into 6838 because it's not a standalone document anymore, and so we'll look at that. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. The actual affecting of cleaning it up would be something that we delegate to IANA, and they do it once the draft is approved.
So we might want to.
We did a similar thing in HTTP recently.
So we might want to make a separate ID just to have a crisp collection of instructions to IANA on how to follow the.
That is what they usually prefer in the IANA consideration section. Yes. Yeah. Oh, he's getting up.
Pete, you want to be in the queue?
I'll just say from the front, the distinction for me between write another draft to do it or just make a small PR is strictly a judgment call on length if you're writing it. So if it comes out to a paragraph, just write the PR and be done.
From my perspective, usually I look to have another draft when you want to have a certain amount of formalism around the adoption to make sure that you truly have consensus on the direction that you're taking. In terms of the operation of these steps that we're talking about going through, it's effectively going to be Pete and I making proposals to the group. First informally in the form of PRs to get feedback, and then in draft revisions to get yes, this is what we intended, and so forth and so on.
So I have a personal opinion on rules documents, which is that the part of rules documents should be as short as possible, and if they have long sections just saying what they need to do during the introduction portion of the rule that nobody would ever have any use for again, I would like to not keep them in the rules document. But that's a personal preference.
I have a strong personal bias towards brevity.
Yeah, brevity is good. Okay, so then we're done with our contemplation of the next steps for 6838 bis, when we can have a little chat about what we do about old registrations. Let me see. Rahul, did you want to speak about it? What's the problem and why?
Yes, so a bunch of the original media types specified in 2046 do not have registration documents, and then there are some other media types that have unstructured registrations. It's just plain text that has been put in. Now, in the case, the one I was looking at, which is message slash RFC 822, the rules itself have been updated multiple times so that now you'll have to look at 5322 or 2822 for uh, getting the actual rules. And the reference in RFC 2046 is itself pointing to RFC 822. So, I mean, the registration and the update process both are involved in this. And this also connects to the 6838 draft because for grandfathered media types, the section that's there, it talks about mapping unfaceted subtype names to faceted subtype names, but not to between unfaceted to unfaceted, which are unregistered. So there also some cleanup may be needed in text. I could propose an issue or a PR as appropriate, but that's the basic uh, summary of what I'm facing.
Pete?
Yeah, so because 5322 bis, which we're trying to get out into full standard, is coming pretty soon, the references in there I know are updated. We might want to do a scrub of the registry sooner rather than later and make sure that we don't have to put additional things in the IANA considerations for 5322 bis for them to go clean in the meanwhile, because I don't know that I went through the registry looking for those references. IANA did their review, came back, and I put in what they asked for, but they may not have looked in there. So yeah, let's start to look through for stale references in the registry. As far as registrations that just have plain text and not structured info, we can, I think, over time clean those up as best we can. Um, you know, I'm not. I never get all wild about having documentation in that registry for things that are relatively obvious, but obviously it would be nice if we can keep them a bit cleaner.
Brian?
One thing that we've had a certain amount of success with in the HTTP and web related registries is explicitly empowering the expert to maintain the registry, to clean things up, to do sensible things, as long as they're not taking too much license. You get some buy-in from the community, but give them some agency so that you can maintain the registry and make it more useful to its consumers. And that has worked out actually pretty well. I think a lot of experts feel that they can't do anything without the community, telling them, some official request that goes through a process. So maybe that's something we might want to consider.
Good point. By the way, we do have a repository called Procedures, and I have a couple of bugs lying there. And I would suggest that things like specific cleanup requests that we dump into that repository and not into the 6838 BIS repository.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that 6838 BIS is an appropriate place to put this sort of ephemeral stuff effectively. And certainly having empowering the expert has the advantage of not requiring the working group to spend its time, because that's painful. Yeah.
Put the pain on the expert instead.
And it's not sustainable.
No. Closing a working group is a good thing. Okay, so I have Brian in the queue, but he's not speaking up. There you are.
I was on the queue. Apologies for joining late. I was a little unclear when I should jump in, and then another conversation started, so I wanted to let that run its course. But on empowering the experts, I guess I just want to come on record here and say that, Mark, as you described the consensus achieved on the suffixes drafts in the last meeting, maybe you don't remember, but I do. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. No, I'm not putting words in your mouth because you said it, but maybe I'm interpreting them a certain way. You described it as consensus via exhaustion. And yes, I don't personally believe that's a good basis on which to build consensus or work from. And there are significant portions of that draft which I personally don't think should be incorporated into a 6838 BIS. And I would be reticent to consider something that's achieved consensus by exhaustion as the verbatim text for incorporation into this document. Suffixes, which I'm never sure if it should be suffixes or suffixes. Is this? I will open an issue, but it's a different one. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure. So what we were talking about just now was empowering the expert to incorporate uncontroversial cleanups of the registry. You're not referring to that, right?
No.
Okay. Okay, because I just want to make sure that
No,
you weren't
I'll
referring to that.
follow.
Oh, okay, I was a little confused there. Okay, fine. No, yeah, the suffixes document, I still do believe to a degree that was consensus by exhaustion, and I'm not suggesting we rip it off that Band-Aid and rediscuss it, but you know, maybe you do. I don't know.
I'm not suggesting that either, but
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I'm also not suggesting that, but that I don't want to rip off the Band-Aid, don't want to relitigate necessarily, but I don't want to see it used as a verbatim place from which text is just copied over because of that consensus from
Right.
exhaustion. It's a tough word for me.
And so maybe I'll speak as editor and ask for some guidance from our chair. Certainly, that, as I said before, that incorporating that text is an interpretive act, and so as editors, we will do our best to reflect what was declared as having consensus before. We will try to confirm that with a working group, and I guess the question is, to the chair, if that consensus, how far can we go before you say no, we can't revisit that consensus, and what are the parameters of that?
So the main consensus reached by exhaustion, because we had to make a decision, was that multiple levels of suffixes are not possible to register.
Indeed.
So that one, I don't think we should revisit unless there's very powerful new evidence. The particular language about who gets to evaluate and what is the ownership in quotes of a the base part of as a faceted registration. I think that's something where we can discuss whether the right language has been reached. Now I see a lot of people,
And
but
that was,
actually Rahul is first on the queue, but the editor might want to respond.
It would be useful, I think, for us if you can sort of circle the uncontroversial parts of what we should be incorporating, because we don't have to do it all in one big lump of the incorporation. So if you identify this is obviously fine and lump it in, or this is obviously controversial and I think it was bogus, that would at least help us with an order of pieces to incorporate. And then when we get to the more controversial things, we can do them one at a time and see if the group still is on board.
that is a very fair and reasonable request. From my position, I'm a bit of a tourist in this area, so I don't have a lot of deep experience with the document or 6838 for that matter. What I've observed is a long and exhausting process around multiple suffixes or not, a final consensus reached of not, and a document that has a lot more in it than that. And so if you want to just say no multiple suffixes, great, do that. But in particular question, the one part that I read, and I have not even read all of it, is this idea of assigning ownership to a change controller over a base media subtype, which is very much the opposite of empowering the designated experts, to be specific, but there may be other stuff. I don't know. I haven't even read it.
Right. And so it's important, I think, to understand the greater context of what we're doing here, in that we declared working group consensus on a document, and we knew that we were going to incorporate that in another document. But above all of that is IETF consensus, and the IETF consensus may be, hey, working group, you got it wrong. Go back to the drawing board. So we're not done yet.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Rahul is on the queue. Do you want to speak to this, or is it new topic?
No, so I'll let you finish the discussion here, and then I'll jump in again.
Okay. So Michael is on the queue. I suppose that's on this one.
Mike Jones. I support Pete's notion of trying to figure out which of the uncontroversial parts, put those in, and try to flag the stuff that probably should have discussion. I agree with the point that assigning change control over a subtype or whatever that is to a change controller for a different media type is a procedural disaster in terms of people dynamics, and it's disempowering to the designated experts. So I would definitely not do that. My request to the editors is that you do these additions as PRs that the working group gets to look at that are sort of single purpose. And then it becomes easy for curmudgeons like Brian and myself to to do our thing. Thank you.
You don't have a patent on it.
Yeah.
So I think as editors, what we're hearing is that, yeah, we should use pull requests, and we should inform the list when there's a major piece of work ready for review, and then the list can, make a decision.
And
There are folks who like to see it in draft form. So if we get enough of a pull request that we go, okay, why don't we just put this particular one out as a new draft? Drafts are cheap. And you can look at it in the draft, or you can look at it as a pull request. Entirely up to you. We can make it work one way or the other.
As you prefer.
Right. What I'll point out, though, is that if there are any number of these controversial issues, we're effectively going to have to queue those up. And if we can't dispose of them in discussion on the list, we're going to be in Bangkok talking about this, which when we were talking about timeline, Murray's going to be sad.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So Daryl is on list, but
I didn't. I
interrupts.
closed my laptop. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As far as consensus by exhaustion, I'm hoping that that's just an expression. We actually, followed process. There was a working group last call, and there's a way to trace back to whatever text is there that we talked about it, and right, because as long as the disinterested AD doesn't come along, well, how did you decide this? As long as that's not the case, then I think it's just a cute name for us, like reaching the end of a topic and moving on. Is that your concern? Is that actually wasn't the case, right? Okay.
Again, supposed to be caught by last call when it goes out for the entire community that you guys didn't actually come to consensus on this and give an elbow to push back. So that's fine.
Somewhat fraught, at least at my understanding, process-wise, is the document was basically consensus called and then halted in favor of this other document. So
We're in a currently weird process state. So yeah.
Acknowledged.
Daryl Miller, one of the Ds who's apparently going to get more agency and who feels like he maybe had a little too much agency recently. I believe I was one of the suggestors of the idea behind the words around getting some additional confirmation as to the semantics of the base subtype, because while we are asked to be designated experts for the registration of media types and the intent of media types, we are in no way experts in what the actual semantics of those underlying media types are. And it is challenging, especially based on recent examples, for us to know that two media type registrations with the same letters as the base subtype do or do not have the same semantics. I have no strong feelings about how that process is resolved, and I certainly don't think that it necessarily needs to be going via change control or whatever process we can find. I just hopefully hope that we can find some way to assist the DEs in getting clarity on whether those semantics are equivalent or not.
Good point.
I would be very much in favor of.
Yeah, move yourself around.
Sorry, I feel like I want.
Otherwise, John can't hear a thing.
That's fair. I would be very much in favor of ways to assist you in that process. I would note that the situation we're currently in would not have any way been avoided by the current mandated text about checking with subtypes. So it's not even a fix for this problem, and any sort of support that you might desire from that situation should not be in strict rules of you must obtain permission from the great and powerful change controller from this type, but some kind of consultation process, something that gives you the help you need with agency to act upon your own discretion. And for that matter, I mean, just kind of throw it the way there, shouldn't you also be checking with the suffix owner then to make sure that the full registered type conforms to whatever the structured suffixes is, as well as the base media subtype? Like, who really would own that? You should be able to ask both, or not, as you see fit, but not be bound by these rigorous rules.
So, if I could interject quickly, one thing Harold said was, we can revisit a consensus if we have new information, and that information can take the form of, some experience, having an example at hand that we weren't fully aware of at the time the decision was made, and the resultant consequences, and perhaps some thinking about the principles we want to see reflected in this.
So I'm Deb Cooley. So I do think it's very difficult for a designated expert in this particular area to know everything about everything. And so it's a sort of a ridiculous situation where somebody comes in and says, I want A, and for the designated expert to know all of the situations where A might be needed other places a priori, right? So I don't know how you solve that. And I don't know that there's any way to have sort of a list of places a designated expert would ask for something that comes up that they've seen out of the blue, perhaps, and know nothing about. So I do think you're in a weird spot, I think. I don't have any good suggestions for you, unfortunately. So I'm sorry. No. No. You're a backup. You're a backup. You don't count.
Okay, I
I
think
don't think that's not the answer, right?
yeah. I think we have sufficiently raised awareness of the issue of this particular issue, and we'll take it. We'll file it as an issue on an issue tracker, so nobody can claim we've forgotten it, and then we'll develop. By the way, I will notice that the number of people who responded to the working group last call was about 1/3 of the people present in the room. That's just a comment. But anyway, Rahul, you had more to say.
Regarding the grandfathered media types, at least, I'm not suggesting that 6838 incorporate all of the contents. It's just that the way it's phrased right now, that if a media type is unregistered, it should be re-registered properly for faceted subtypes. The same should apply for unfaceted. Just throw in that one line. I can suggest that change. So that was all I was requesting. One other thing regarding the, I didn't understand all of this regarding the change controllers particularly. For example, there is uh, radio/MPEG, which I don't think should remain with the IESG if JPEG was given to JPEG. So how is that transfer, or who's going to be authority on deciding who gets responsibility for what? Uh, I, I would
think
prefer some clarity on that.
I think video/MPEG should probably be deprecated as a stupid idea. But we should probably look at each case on a case-by-case basis. Or the designated expert is probably the responsible person for that. But the designated expert will not do anything until prodded. We might want to use our GitHubs for prodding.
Harold, would you suggest?
And the DEs can always ask the IESG for guidance.
So yeah, basically submit request to IANA asking the specific change, and then this will prompt us as experts to, oh, this is above our pay grade, we need to ask somebody else, and then we'll either ask on the mailing list to ask ISG or both.
One of the bugs in the procedures tracker is, should we use GitHub for keeping track of all these things? Yep. Okay. Rahul, last words on the subject?
Okay, this is a very noob question. Who's going to be making these requests?
You are.
Where am I supposed to make them in that case?
As a starting point, you can either file them in the procedures registry, or you can just send mail to IANA saying, I think this registration needs to be changed.
Fine. Okay. I'll take the responsibility.
Send it to IANA, then IANA will have their own ticketing system, so they will track on their end, and then we'll nag experts to make us a decision that will make us do something. And which kind of reminds me of a side note. When people send, please review my fancy media type or to media mailing list, media type. It's nice, but if I don't have cycles, I'm not going to pay attention until it actually comes to me which I know it's not the best outcome. So yeah, if you really want to track it, send it to IANA.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, we have actually 43 minutes left, but there are we have 17 minutes left, but Daryl wants to occupy at least one of them.
Daryl Miller. This falls under any other business, and I'm just curious on guidance from this group. We have recently been getting media type registrations from a particular organization where they're submitting 30 media type registrations in a bulk because they are extremely granular media types. Is this, in this group of experts, considered a reasonable thing to do? Are we okay with having the registry full of potentially thousands of registrations from one particular org, or do we consider this not a best practice and should we be providing that feedback?
Is this one of the registered bona fide SDOs?
I think so, although they're under a vendor subtree.
Oh.
It is under the vendor subtree. It's the 3GPP org.
So we deal with this a little bit, something similar in some of the registries that I'm an expert for, in that people sometimes just have a good idea and want to register it, thinking that that will magically make it real in the world. And so we've kind of started developing guidance about, seeing some level of activity around it, or having some level of specification that just isn't some guy in a GitHub repo with a good idea, and especially around naming. If you consume a common name, the expectation is higher than if you have a very specific name. And I'm wondering if maybe as part of 6838 this we need to develop this kind of guidance of, it's not vexatious registration, it's just giving people these practices to guide when it's appropriate to register and when they probably need to be looking elsewhere. Because I can see from a DE perspective that can be problematic.
Manu is on the queue.
Have we asked them what the reasoning is for the number of media types? I mean, are they so different that they actually need multiple? I mean, the DEs can always ask the question of, can you please, this is usually out of the ordinary. Can you please explain why you need this many media types? Many other registrants do not need anywhere near this many. And then, of course, pointing to a best practices document that I'm guessing we don't necessarily have. Have you asked them?
Yes, and they're registering so many because they're basically registering a new media type for every entity or type that they define. And I had provided guidance that that's probably not ideal and they should use some kind of media type parameter for defining that. They said that, well, that's not how they've done it and this is their process now, and it was accepted before, so they want to continue with that same process.
Would it help if the group helped you respond, meaning there are multiple people in the group that feel that that's probably not the best way forward? Instead of just putting you on the spot, maybe the group could respond to help. That's it.
Another possibility on top of that is there is a formal liaison to 3GPP, and maybe have a sit down with them, explain that this is crushing the DE, and maybe we could have a more formal interaction about what best practices here are. Given that it's one particular group that this is being an issue with, and maybe they haven't thought about alternatives that would be less taxing on the infrastructure, they may be willing, if it's through a formal liaison written up by, and who is 3GPP liaison right now? Who is it? Ari. Yeah. Sit down with Ori and sketch out something that will be a formal liaison from the IANA DE to 3GPP saying we would like to talk about other possibilities, and that might be more effective given their very formal structure.
Alexei.
Right. And I'm just being slightly devil's advocate and speculative. Some of it might be coming from the protocols they're using, and they might need unique strings because that might be the only way to differentiate things. It is possible, but maybe they need this property, maybe they're not. And for us as experts, we cannot always tell. Again, it's the limit of how much you can actually know about all different formats and different protocols being used with. So yeah, some help would be nice.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we have come to the end of our agenda. We have action items, and where Mark and Pete will start providing PRs for integration of new text and ask for review on the mailing list. Or tell the mailing list to go comment on the in GitHub on the pull request or whatever. Yeah, you decide. Yeah. So watch the mailing lists, and in between all the registration requests, you will find some messages from the editors or from the chairs saying, "Yeah, I was I remember that we had the discussion when we established the group, and I was unhappy with it, with the decision, but it was definitely a majority of the working group who thought that it was a good idea. It keeps them informed about how much pain the registry the is in, but otherwise we can always request a mailing list if we want to. Yeah. Okay, then we will give you 10 minutes back. Thank you very much, and see you on the mailing list, and maybe not in Bangkok. It depends, all depends on you. We didn't take it seriously. Nobody should take it. Oh, yeah.
You two get March off. I'll take them all from.
No, we'll just send you the special ones.
We're not going to deal with this one till